Great. Well, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're from in the world. I'm delighted to be welcoming you to this webinar session where we're talking about the impact of consumer technology on the workplace. I'm joined here with Frederick van Bellingen, the partner of HR Path, and I'm Duncan Casemore, co-founder of Applaud. So before we get stuck into the webinar, just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, the session will be recorded so that you will have access to a recording after the session. Additionally, we will be sending out a copy of the slides so that you have those. There is some good content in the slides. We'll be talking about the Forrester reports that we have, and you'll be able to get a copy of that through a QR code at the end of the deck. And then we will also be doing a Q&A session at the end, so we welcome you to put in questions at any point during the session. There is a question section on the GoToWebinar. You can see that towards the bottom, and you can go into that question section and you can type in a question to either to us guys, and then we will read out those questions at the end and get the view of Frederick and myself on those. So I think let's get started. I think we're all here now. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So let me just introduce who we are if you haven't heard of us. I'm one of the founders, CTO of Applaud, and we are what we call an experience layer. We care all about the employee experience, and Applaud is a platform that is designed to connect with the technologies and systems and processes that you already have in place. So we're not a replacement for stuff that you already have, we're a complement. And we're all about serving the needs of the employee first. So we're not a HR first platform, we're an employee first platform. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but fundamentally we care an enormous amount about employee experience and digital employee experience, which is the crux of what this session is going to be about. We typically work with really large organizations. The reason I'm telling you this is because if you have somewhere between 500 and 90,000 employees, it's a fairly large spectrum, you will inevitably have a level of complexity within your HR landscape and your HR processes. And that complexity really is making life quite difficult for employees sometimes. And we have to really think about how do we simplify the experience? How do we make life easier for the employees? How do we make them more productive? And so that level of complexity means we really have to put a lot more thought and design thinking into the way that we design those processes for our employees. And Frederick, do you want to introduce HR Path and what you're all about?
Absolutely, my pleasure. Again, pleasure to be with you, Duncan, this morning on my side, in the afternoon for you. I'm Frederick van Bellingen. I'm one of the partners at HR Path, based out of Toronto, Canada. HR Path has been in existence for the last over 20 years now, based out of Paris. We focus mainly on three lines of strategy and business development: advisory services, which is helping customer, again, in the HR world to really focus on their HR performance from a process, from an automation, from a transformation perspective, from a change management. A lot of that HR foreground work prior to implementing any kind of technology, and we support many different global HR platform. And we also have a line of business which is focusing on the ongoing support services and managed payroll services around the world, mainly in Europe, in France, and some place in North America. We over 250 employees in 18, 19 countries, depending who you ask, and there's a couple more coming. So I'm happy to be here with you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure having you. And I think we share a lot of common thinking around employee experience and what that should look like between us, right? Which is why we're here.
That's exactly why we're here.
Great. So we care about this, which is why we commissioned a report written by Forrester, and this is a really deep study about the future of HR and what consumer grade technology can do for the workplace. I think fundamentally, when we speak to a lot of employees, we're used to using consumer applications in our personal life. We use our mobile phone with all our great apps on it. And for many, when you step into the workplace, you go back sort of 20 years in time and have a really complicated, disparate set of processes that you need to navigate. And it's how do we close the gap on that? And where does that sit in the priorities? And where should our budgets lie? And this report is all about examining some of that and exploring that in a bit more detail. So what we've done is we've pulled out a few really interesting stats that we wanted to talk about today that I think will help you take some of this stuff back to your own teams internally to see where you can drive better experiences for your workplace. Before we do that, we wanted to operate a little poll. So I'd love it if you can take a moment to answer this quick poll that should have popped up on your screen. How many HR tools do you have across your entire employee lifecycle? Think about not just your core HR, not just your payroll, but your applicant tracking systems, your survey and engagement tools, your intranets, your interviewing tools, benefit portals, pension, retirement savings. We tend to have quite a few, but I'm really interested to see how you guys answer this one today. Okay, I see a few have voted for 2 to 4. I'd love to examine that in a bit more detail another time to really dig into that. Okay. We have 77% have voted. Last chance to sneak in your vote before we close this one. All right, I think we can close that vote now and move on. Thank you very much. So that's quite interesting. I don't know if we're able to show the poll results on the screen now. It might be quite interesting to see that. There we go. So 40% 2 to 4, I don't believe it. But interestingly, only 10% in 4 to 6, 30% in 6 to 8, and 20% 10 plus. So 50% of you have got at least 6 different HR tools on your estate that you can think of off the top of your head, which is a lot. And this is pretty consistent with what we've seen. If I can just take back screen sharing controls now. Thank you. When we look at what organizations are planning to do, 75% are planning to upgrade their existing technology. So we do see that the majority of organizations, especially those with 1,000 employees plus, have more than 10 or 13 different tools on their HR estate, and often hundreds of tools when we think about the broader set of tools that employees use across their entire workspace. And it becomes complicated. We bought more tools during COVID, and whereas previously we might have been planning to do some big disruptive rip and replace projects, maybe we swap out our core HR with a new one, maybe we buy a new applicant tracking system. What the Forrester report is telling us is that we've changed the way we're spending our tech budget slightly. And now, rather than doing big, expensive rip and replace projects, now 75% are planning on investing to improve what they've already got and finding ways of making that better. To flip that around, only 25% are thinking about rip replace projects, which is a really stark difference to what we had pre-COVID. So I'd like to explore this a little more. Frederick, I'm really interested to hear how you think that organizations can use the limited budgets they've got to improve the technologies they've already got to drive a better customer experience for their employees. How do we do that?
It's tricky, and I'm going to bring up an example I recently had with an organization just over 1,000 employees, based across North America. They're growing fast in the engineering space, and one of the executives here kind of we've been implementing, their core HR technology, more of a traditional cloud-based, but still traditional application. And he came to me and we're talking, he's on the phone, and he said, when I'm on the Teams meeting, I go to my computer, I can transfer the Teams meeting. I can transfer from my mobile device back on my computer and forth. In fact, this is standard application. I want to be able to use right now they're going through a transformation around recruiting. And say, I want to be able to transfer my interview from my laptop to my mobile so I can go on to my day. I can, be everywhere. And these are the kind of conversation we're getting more and more. It's, customers are saying, we get those tools, especially I think, as you said, like the last 2 years with COVID, people are kind of working from everywhere, anywhere, and being able to do the same with their HR experience from a managerial perspective or from an employee perspective. You're on the other side of the conversation. He's talking to a candidate or he's talking to an employee. He wants to be able to do the same thing, having a performance process that continue on from any platform you're on. I mean, to answer your question, it's not an easy thing with the budget that most customers have, especially when a lot of that funding, that budget goes into a large ERP platform to focus on traditional employee data and transaction, where I think some applications have missed the focus on the user experience first. We see a trend. I mean, I see the difference. We see large enterprise software kind of focusing more on unique experience and less on day-to-day transaction. But it's still not completely there for a lot of our customers. It's not an easy answer to give them that they might have to continue sometimes with this sort of multi-layers or multi-network of application.
I think what's great about that example that you shared is how it's really thinking about it from an end user process perspective, from an employee's process perspective. So how do I create a process around performance review which is not disjointed and complicated and continuous? And I think sometimes we buy technology for technology's sake. Actually, it's great to step back, look at the journey, look at the process a little bit, and think, well, how do we make that process simpler? How do we improve that and make that easier so I don't have to relearn something complicated every time I try and do it? And I think that's really interesting about that particular example. Okay, great, good. One more poll, and I promise that's the end of the polls, but really interested to just ask you another question if we can initiate the second one. Here we go. That should be appearing on your screen now. What have you found most challenging about supporting anywhere work? So ability to support remote workers, high number of help desk requests, lack of visibility into workforce data, a lack of automation, or complex workflows. Okay. The votes flying in, thank you. Oh, this is interesting.
People are warming up, that's good.
Yeah, yeah. We get a sneak preview of how the voting is going on before we get to announce the results. And I think some people are changing their vote too. That's interesting.
Can you do that?
Okay. We'll just give it another 10 seconds. Okay, that's good. Let's perhaps we can share the results for that one live. Let's see what we've got. So this is really interesting. Clearly a real mix of problems across the spectrum here. But lack of automation, I mean, goodness, the amount of manual work and processes that's alluding to. I mean, I don't know about you, Frederick. I'm hearing about digital transformation everywhere at the moment, bigger than it's ever been before. I mean, it's everywhere.
More than ever. I mean, we've had, especially in the middle of the COVID, we've had customers, more traditional public sector, municipality organization, usually are several years, if not sometimes decade behind the private sector, and we've seen them coming to us with demand of strong HR transformation program to a point where it kind of surprised us. We weren't expecting these kind of customers, to be ready, but they're like most of us. I mean, they were forced into an environment where they weren't ready for it.
Yeah. No, for sure. And interesting also to see the spread of some of the other issues as well. Ability to support remote workers, high number of help desk requests, and complex workflows all in equal spreads. If I could take back screen sharing now, please. Thank you. So another interesting stat is 74% of those surveyed by Forrester struggle to support remote workers. So interesting, the audience here today battling with automation more than remote workers, and perhaps we're starting to master anywhere work, or perhaps people are returning to work. I'm not sure, but really interesting to see that there is a real mix and spread. A lot of tickets, a lot of help desk requests going into HR, so HR still consumed with support. A lot of manual processes, goodness, that must be causing all sorts of pain in terms of poor data quality, hitting productivity, and then remote employees. So what can we do, Frederick, to solve some of the challenges? So for our audience here today, how do we automate some of this stuff using the budgets we've got, and how do we support remote employees?
I don't know the budget you have, but mine is not big enough for a lot of those. But I'll give you another example. Like we, in the middle of the pandemic, or we're still in it, so I don't know where exactly in the middle is. But anyway, a year ago, a customer called me and said, we did this investment. We worked on this cloud application. It's all web enabled, and they were convinced they've done the right things. And he said, well, we have a problem because now everybody's home and they can't access it. I said, what do you mean they can't access it? Like you told me, it's in the cloud. Yeah, but everything is based on our network ID, and it's single sign-on, and you have to be in the office. It's like, okay, like what kind of automation were you looking for? What kind of process were you looking for to make cloud-based and web enabled and maybe mobile enabled if you still have to require the person to to be in the office? So kind of counterproductive, I guess, methodology in this case. That really create a complete mess in terms of opening up their network so that people can actually process their work and their data in actually from home. You got to go back to the question about struggling to support people remotely. Make sure first of all, when you say it's cloud and it's outside, it's actually available from anywhere at any given time. But really to go back to your point, I think the market is offering more and more smaller application, more points application, or best of breed in some cases, that plugged into a larger ERP solution, like the Oracle, Workday, and SuccessFactors of the world, and that allow you to really get a strong result, a really strong value realization out of a small investment. I'll give you another example that a customer recently implemented. And we helped them, was a small boutique French customer, boutique partner that helped customer who are heavily looking at new hiring, and everybody's struggling with talent right now. It's instead of having to go on LinkedIn and do some research and having to post everywhere, they really automate the sourcing process. So they have this small tools. It's plugged in very quickly, and it goes out and grab candidates from different sites, like the Indeed and LinkedIn, rank them, score them, and so basically from a hiring manager perspective, save them tons of time. The ROI for them, it's that time saving. That manager not spending reading resume, reading application, finding out, is this employee really the quality and the competencies that I'm looking for? The system does it all for you, and you kind of really focus on that top 10%. But that for them was the ROI was realized right away. Like the moment they turn it on, the time to hire, the time to realization on the value of the recruit in terms of getting the person on board and everything was done. And sometimes, I think customer have been investing so much money in large HR technology programs, and not sometimes opening up their ideas to smaller applications that can easily plug in. Just kind of look outside maybe the big box that you purchase, right?
So true. I think the dream of single source is no longer a dream or an ambition for most organizations. Like, we live in a best of breed world, and it's getting more best of breed. Most of us have bought or are planning to buy at some point Workday, Oracle HCM Cloud or SuccessFactors Employee Central. Like, we need a core HR system to bring things together, but we're also buying the best of everything else we can get. And so it's really not that surprising to hear lack of automation being so high up on the agenda today in particular, because we have all of these different bits of technology. We don't usually have a robust strategy to integrate them all together from a technology perspective, but also from a business process perspective. And for employees, it's complicated. Like, where do I go to do a particular process? Well, I do part of it in Workday, I do another part in Taleo, I do another part by filling out an intranet form. I also need to speak to this department, speak to these individuals to help. And it gets really complicated. And so I think, given that we're in best of breed, and best of breed is growing, and it's only going to get more complicated, we need to find new ways of being able to bring all of those things together. And I think we're really seeing a lot of new types of technologies that can help support the modern architecture that people have today.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. This is the last stat that we've pulled out from the Forrester report, probably one of the most powerful ones, because we often talk about employee experience, but then how do we tie that back to an ROI? What is the business case? Should I be spending my budget on employee experience programs or other priorities? And what this tells us is that 90% of organizations believe their managers lose 2 to 4 hours per week to HR tasks unnecessarily. So, that is a lot of time to be spending unnecessarily on HR tasks. Of course, employees and managers have to do HR tasks. There's also HR tasks that sometimes benefit them back too. They get value out of it, right? But we want our managers and employees to be as productive as we possibly can. And that lack of automation we've seen before, could be part of the reason that this is so high. A lack of a solid tier 0 support structure could be another example where employees just can't get answered to simple questions without speaking to HR or raising a case or having to speak to multiple departments. So some of those things can really help drive this. But a question to you, Frederick, how do HR teams go about finding budget or prioritizing employee experience programs above all of their others?
Above all the others, define others.
How important is this? Should this be a priority?
Yeah, I think you preach to the. I'm sorry, what's the expression again? You preach to the chapel. I love using experience and recent conversation we've had with customer. This customer was telling us that they've done this some level of automation, right? They thought they've done a lot of work so that when somebody get promoted, I'll give you an example. Somebody gets promoted day after the org chart is updated, right? They're online. The employee get the other employee that were previously reported to another manager get an update and message, something like this. And they thought, okay, this is good. Like we've done something great from a user experience. But then after a few weeks, they started realizing, again, because of lack of vision from all the automation required from one HR process, because there's so many different impacted process from one HR standpoint. That all the performance forms that we're currently ongoing were not updated with the new managers. This manager also had some hiring process that the candidate would not follow up on. So suddenly there's all those subsequent process that were not completely updated, and that's where the HR people were having to do a lot of manual update. That 90% completely resonate with me, and I'm sure most of our customers, because they find that it's still there. I think. Being able, and I still struggle to understand why we don't see this more from a lot of our customers, having an actual clear understanding of the process. Like there's always a desire for future, evolution and transformation, but most customers that I work with don't have a clear understanding of actually how things work today. If you want to automate, you want to build automation. Through a best of breed, or even with some of the core application you already implemented. Understand how things work for your people. Like understand your HR teams, what they have to do on a daily basis. One manager, what that 90% of that 2 to 4 hours a week, what are they spending their time on? So you can actually improve that. Even cutting a 1 hour per week is 25% improvement. That 90% will be much better, right? I think even before thinking about technology, sometimes we jump the gun on oh, I heard this new app, everybody's using it. I gotta set it up, right? Let's just spend some time on yourself and understanding how things, how process work together inside HR, outside HR, how the HR can actually work with the rest of the enterprise, of the organization, and then from there start to building AI. I still see a lot of, many customers not even considering AI yet. You say that tier 0. To me, that's where AI comes in and help that 90% goes down. A lot of the times, employee that calls into a service center, internally or externally, it's I don't remember how to do this. I did this last month. I set up that timesheet, or I submit a vacation request, but I just can't remember how to do it, right? So work on understanding what you do and who you are, and then kind of focusing on small improvement that I'm sure have major impact.
Yeah, that's so true. And there's so many examples that we can think about of frustrations we've had where we've wasted a lot of time trying to do things. I had a friend's daughter who recently got her first payslip and had to get a tax form out, and it took like several months of being bounced around different departments to get out this tax form that should be fairly straightforward. I was speaking with an organization last week, and the transfer process was just grueling. If they wanted to transfer an employee from one place to another, there's a form you fill out in Workday to do the transfer. There's nothing wrong with that form, but before filling out that form, you need to have a position in place to receive a new employee into. And there was a form on the internet you had to fill out to get approval for a new position and the budget for that. But then you couldn't fill out that position form until there's a vacancy advertised for that role on the applicant tracking system first. So you had to go and fill out and raise a vacancy requisition, fill out a separate position form to get the headcount for that, and then try and piece it all together in Workday. And that's nothing about how does a manager create a great transfer experience for an employee leaving their team, and how does a receiving manager create a brilliant onboarding experience, that person joining their team? How do you make that frictionless? And the reality of this is those organizations that have really complex set of HR services are going to lose, but people are going to get frustrated and leave. Like that's the evidence is there. That's what happens. You have to create a great customer experience on the inside for your employee. Productivity saving here, and the ROI for that is clear. I mean, there's clear saving here, but what this means is the Forrester report goes into quite a lot of detail about some of the other savings around people leaving within the first year of joining because of complexity and a poor customer experience on the inside. About the time savings from HR from being freed from the administrative burden of answering the same question over and over again. And so the ROI is very clear, but equally there's a softer side where we're losing people because they can get a better experience with a different organization elsewhere. And before, where we could tackle that with great office-based experiences, for many people now, the digital employee experience is the employee experience. That is my only interface with my organization. I work through it entirely digitally. Get that wrong, and people leave, and that's it. So that's quite a powerful, interesting statistic to finish on there.
And I'm sure that if you ask your customer that you just referred to, why that complexity exists and all those steps, they probably just won't even be able to answer. It's there because it was there. It was just sometimes just a lot of that just exists because of legacy process, legacy system that just imposes, and people don't like we all know, people don't like the change. So let's keep it there, even if it doesn't completely make sense. But
yeah, there's certainly true. And I think the great thing in this case was they've taken the step to recognize it's an issue and try and do something about it, which is fantastic.
That's the beginning.
It's the beginning. Okay, great. So I wanted to give both Applaud and HR Path's perspective on how we think about this, how we look at solving things. So first, from an Applaud perspective, We've been around for a while. We are a cloud software vendor, so obviously we are technology focused, but we also really understand that technology actually is a small part of HR and digital transformation. And really, you've got to get the vision and strategy right before you can plug in the right set of technologies. But if you have a level of complexity within your organization, you have a lot of different technologies, some confusing processes, and you're getting feedback from your employee customer that things are too hard, things are frustrating and annoying, and you really want to try and bring some of that consumer experience into the workplace. Like that's what Applaud is. We're a platform that's designed for employees first, whereas most HR tools like your payrolls are really designed to serve the needs of HR first. And so Applaud can be a great way of you not having to rip and replace various parts of your components, because there might be a brilliant payroll system, maybe the best payroll engine you've got. It could just be that that tiny bit of employee-facing self-service sucks, and you want to do something about that. Applaud is a great way of providing a one-stop shop to your employee customers without disrupting some of the great back-end technologies that you've got to support your business operations. And so, the problems we solve, we've talked about complex landscape, but it's not just about complex technology. Actually, processes are usually complicated. You may have to speak to lots of different people, lots of different departments. Often a HR operating unit is structured in vertical silos. So when you've got a journey like onboarding or offboarding or transfer, it touches many different departments, and it can be a really complicated process. So unlike a traditional HR portal, which sort of just tends to be a bunch of links off to other places, using an automation engine, a workflow engine that's got thousands of connectors to different enterprise applications, can mean you can actually digitalize and automate those processes too. And then finally, we haven't really spoken much about agility today, but a lot of HR teams are really reorganizing their operating model to be agile. Like we hear a lot about agile design thinking, journey maps, experience maps, which are amazing things to be looking at. Please look at that if you're not already. And to support that agile environment where you have fast-paced innovation in HR, you kind of need a set of technologies that can do that. You don't want monolithic things that take you 12 months, 18 months to deploy. You want things that can move quickly. So we're big evangelists of no-code platforms where you can build stuff drag and drop without needing developers. It's in the hands of HR, where you're not dependent on IT teams. Looking at tools that can support that modern operating model, I think is really, really important. And then, I won't dwell on this, but the reds are some of the things that you might recognize within your organization. The low automation or limited automation crops up in a few of those different places, or is a cause of many of those items on there. And Applaud can just help bring all of those things together and automate that process. We really care above all else about making employee experiences better, about creating things that truly generate value for the employee, rather than benefiting a HR team and burden the manager. And that's really what Applaud is about. That's the way we think about challenging some of these existing thinking. And then, Frederick, over to you to tell us a little bit about the way that HR Path solves some of these challenges.
Can you do a couple of clicks, because I think there's some animation that there we go. This even better. Yeah, a couple more, I think, and then we'll have the whole slide. This is probably easier now. Thank you. There you go. As I introduced a little bit HR Path earlier, our business model is really to focus on those three sort of life event of HR function within our customer base. But really, what is important today in our conversation is really focusing on that advisory services, which is a team for us of professionals that come from the HR world. They're not technology, and we have a large implementation group. They love technology, like myself. I came from that background many years ago in Europe, but the advisory are really HR professional. They come from customer side, and they really help our customer understanding. And I kind of mentioned through a couple of examples earlier, understanding, what is it they're looking for? What is the transformation? What is the journey that they need to go through? What are the steps of that journey? And also, we help a lot with persona, like really building several persona, which is kind of taking a specific person or a specific role within the organization and really going deep into the analysis of the life of that person within the organization, from the moment that person applied, from the person walking into an office space or a plant or a site, and how that day-to-day life exists, really specific for that person. And that really helped a lot of our customer understanding where the transformation can go, and helping those situations, those persona, and really the moments that matter into the life of those employees. That's really what the advisory service is. It's change management, communication strategy, a lot of different things. But that's really what this team does, and that's to the topics of today really important for customer understanding these. We can go to the next slide. Of course, what you see here is also that, well, of course, we support a lot of technology. But when it comes to technology, HR Path historically has been very, even with the size that we are, we're not truly a very large SI, but we do have a very open mindset when it comes to partnering. So we don't just have one partnership, one focus. We focus on multiple tier 1, tier 2 HR technology platforms, and also best of breed like Applaud and other smaller applications that can really bring lots of value in a very short term and reduced budget. To come back a little bit to that advisory team, kind of give you a little bit of a sense of the different the 3 different area that they focus on, and most of the one that kind of referred to today's conversation is it's really understanding that employee engagement, the understanding how to best support employee, how to best support the manager, how they interact with employee, and building and tailoring very clear digital experience for those employee and those managers is critical for the work that we're trying to accomplish, which is really, as I go back to our initial mission, which is kind of helping the HR performance of the performance of the HR function within our customer base. Of course, once the software is selected, small or large, a lot of that work is helping with the adoption, with the efficiency. In terms of adoption, I think the market has also been a lot more open. I don't know, Duncan, if you see this also, but we see a lot more of our customer coming back with employee engagement, really focusing on trying to capture the experience and the feedback from those moments that those employees were interacting with the technology, and having a more of an open kind of conversation with the employee through employee engagement. What do you see on your end?
Yeah, 100%. I think still too often we are seeing organizations designing for the empty chair, and we'd love to have more of the employee voice in the room co-designing these processes, but there is a great set of tools that are capturing feedback from employees. Most people still do the annual survey, of course, but being able to bring much more contextualized real-time feedback into the flow of work. How was your day 1 onboarding experience? What did you think of your first engagement with a HR service desk? How's your transfer experience been? How do you think your promotion went? Being able to capture that kind of real-time feedback in the event. We're seeing a lot of organizations think about how they can do that, and really listen to the employee voice and react and create programs around that. So I think that's really exciting.
And one of the things that we've been building at HR Path within our advisory team, it's also with the help of psychologists. It's really not just offering the opportunity for HR organization to capture the feedback, to have this employee sentiment evaluated, but also to build a plan of action. It's good that customers started to collect information, and then they just put it on the shelf. Say, hey, last year we had 75% of this, and okay, and what did you do for the other 35%? How did you put a plan in action to actually improve that 75%? And a lot of customers say, oh, well, no, we're just collecting. No, you need to do something about it. You want to get better. I'm sure some of those numbers that comes out of those engagement, have some positive and negative aspects. So We try to help our customer, not just on the collection. That's more to kind of the enabling of the technology, the survey and the employee sentiment collection, but really understanding the result and also asking the right question at the right moment, not just, like you said, like an annual survey and done, we're happy at work kind of thing. That's one of the things we do, but understanding what to do better. That's what our team also focus on. And I think, yeah, the three level of support that we bring, I think it's kind of summarized a little bit differently what our team in the HR advisory services kind of focus on, which is strategy, transformation, and change. We have those fancy names on top, but that's what they stand for: strategy, transformation, and change. On the strategy, really, lately it's been, of course, a lot of back to work, how to get even people to work in a completely different environments. Some customer, maybe more in, I would say, in Europe, where the sort of the traditional work in the office only kind of mentality was impacted the most. I think North America seems to have been more open to remote work. Some customer had already completely have their employee working remotely. So for a lot of our European customer, the strategy of how to kind of set their world in a completely different way for the employee to work remotely has been a lot of that strategy thinking. Transformation, understanding operation model, completely different way to interact now that you don't have the same accessibility, physical accessibility to your employee, technology evolving into different things. A lot of reskilling also, a lot of work in those areas for transformation team. The change management, the coaching, it's more for the customer who have ongoing initiative that kind of need that support on the change management side. So that's just a summary about the kind of the three level of support that we provide to most of our customers when it comes to advisory services. And if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about kind of more on the technology side, what these strategy, transformation, and change kind of apply to. No, there was
Sorry.
the same. That's okay. So when it comes to strategy, when you think about, you design which direction you're going, we have a team that can help with vendor selection, vendor evaluation, road mapping, which can be, again, the different level of technology. On the transformational side, kind of, helping also the ongoing support of large HR transformation from project management, solution design thinking. You mentioned that earlier. So that's the kind of idea that most of our team focus on the more IS aspect of HR transformation, or the more IS aspect of advisory services. And that's kind of what that team does. If I summarize quickly, really kind of working with HR Path, thank you. Where do we try to fit? Pragmatic, it's I think started with just the way we organize, with super flat. I mean, most of the partners and the leadership is involved with customer. Every one of us is still heavily involved with day-to-day activity with customer. Kind of give us the organization a sense of being close to the real world, and not up in the sky kind of thinking about stuff. Lots of expertise within HR Pass and different platform, different HR advisory services, or even on the operational side with our service centers and managed payroll services. Of course, lots of our thinking today, it's focusing first on digital aspects first, mobile first, digital transformation. I don't think it's a surprise here. And then proximity, it's just the way we've been growing. We're in 19 different countries. We intend to be in 4 or 5 more countries in the next 12 months. The idea here is that a lot of our customers, especially in the mid market, in that sort of 500 to 2,000 employee base, who have grown internationally, they've been focusing their growth the same way, and they sometimes find it hard to find a partner who have that sort of local feel with a global mindset. Some people call it global. And that's what we try to do, like having really resource in every country that can act locally if needed, because those organizations don't maybe have the budget or the mentality sometimes to kind of work with large SI, like the big 5, which probably don't have the money for that. So that's where HR Pass comes in with that proximity approach. And I think that summarize a couple of examples here, but that's just, we can send that over to people. They can have a little bit more look about some of our references and some of the things we've done from an HR transformation perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you, Frederick. Okay, so I mentioned that we'll give you a QR code where you can get access to the report at the end of the session. Again, just to reiterate, these slides will be sent out along with the recording, so you can access this afterwards as well. And I think now we are going to move into Q&A. We have probably five minutes maybe for Q&A before we break the session. I think we started a little late, so that's good. So if you want to ask a question, please now put your question into the Q&A panel. I will read out the question and share that with Frederick. Maybe we can both provide our perspectives on them. Okay.
I got my dogs just woke up. I've been working from home.
You ask a question.
They don't ask me any question yet, not yet.
Okay. So here's one for you, Frederick.
Is there a question? Oh, I have to check.
It's okay. I have.
You have them?
One here
Okay.
for you. What measures are you seeing customers use to determine the value realized by an improved EX, more efficient processes, etc.? So how are customers measuring the value of improved EX?
I'm sure you have your own ideas around that. I think a lot of the measurement that we see being asked in terms of KPIs and on analytics and dashboard is time to, you know, what was the time before for a process to be executed from, you know, complete from A to Z, and what is the time now that the UI has been improved or even implemented sometimes. So I would say time is it's a critical one, but it cannot be the only way to measure success. I mean, it's not because the clicks are faster, it's the quality, right? And sometimes the quality is the harder aspect of measuring the performance of the UI.
Great.
How would you see the quality measurements of a UI? I mean, you guys really work a lot more on the front end. We sometimes with our partners, kind of our technology partner, kind of work more on the back end.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Forest report gives some good insights into how you can sort of measure the ROI for things like productivity and first year retention, HR caseload is another thing, yeah. But also I think we can also look to the consumer world for feedback. So how do consumers, how do marketeers measure customer experience? And they will look at things like Net Promoter Score, which is something that probably many of you put in your survey. If not, you could and should. They also look at things like goal completions on digital processes. So how many people successfully complete an onboarding process or a process to raise a requisition to hire somebody successfully, and how many abandon that process? So I think measuring the kind of goal completion and progress through some of those is an interesting measurement, because it gives you an idea as to how successful your digital services are being and how good that tier 0 is functioning. So those are some of the things that I would be thinking about as well. Okay, great. I think one more question coming in, I think. We kind of covered this a little bit. As companies think about their budgets for the new year in 2022, why must digital employee experience be at the top of their priority list? And how can data support that? So yeah, we sort of touched on this, but where should digital employee experience programs sit on next year's priority list?
Well, I think the question, kind of, if you reverse it a little bit in terms of the the data has to be there, right? In most applications, I mean, one of the conversations we have with many customers is, you want to invest into a new technology. Nobody wants to go on premise. Everybody wants to go to the cloud. But before making a selection, think about the level of integration the UI side, on the backend side, on the the real time that you're looking for from the overall solution, the overall solution architecture. Because some software have more open gate, open channel with the external world. Others don't. We had I'll give you an example. A customer who was really focusing on their learning experience because they have people on different sites, and they need to have those people certified for specific compliance certification before they can even touch a machine, right? And for them to be able to have an access to that learning that they already have paid and purchased from a provider, to have a platform, a mobile experience that can grab the content up to date, because that compliance get updated on a regular basis, have it right away, being able to the people to click, follow, read the fine print and say yes, you can go and start working. These are not even employees, they're contractors. So I think before you start investing money, to go back to your question, into digital experience, understand the future of your architecture. I mean, maybe that's my IT cap that comes back on a little bit, but it's sometimes critical, because there's a lot of options out there that can really make that user experience better, and there's more and more of those options. But when you put them all together, and we're going to have to go to a best of breed, you want to make sure they all kind of work together.
That's great. That's so good. Yeah. But I think if we look at data points, we have a great data point just from this session today, right? Well, what is the number one problem you're facing? Well, it's a lack of automation. So digitalizing some of those manual processes feels like that should be high up the agenda. There's a big number one problem. Let's solve that as the number one problem. So yeah, great. Well, listen, I think we'll wrap up now. We're approaching the end of the time, but Frederick, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate the conversation, and thank you to everybody who's dialed into today's webinar. Really appreciate your time. If you have any feedback or late questions that come to mind afterwards, you have our contact details at the end of the webinar slides. You know how to reach us, and we'll send out the recording and the slides again after the session. So thank you all very much. I wish you a great day.
Thanks for the invitation. Happy holidays. It's a little early, but happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Great.
Very good.
Thanks. Bye-bye.